Hey, this is the World Advice Channel 2. What I want to talk about today is a topic of how we can fix capitalism. So, when it comes to the topic of capitalism, the obvious, you know, economic ideology or whatever you like to call it, the main economic system that we live under, that tends to get a lot, and I mean a lot of hate nowadays, specifically due to corruption. What I'm going to be talking about today is a topic of what can be done to obviously fix the corruption problem so capitalism can no longer suffer from this chronic problem that it's been suffering from for quite some time. Okay. So now that I've mentioned that, let's get started. So, when it comes to how we can fix the corruption issue, the best way to do it is to have government officials monitored when they use public funds. So, when it comes to this issue that, um, that of course is corruption, you know, um, the specific issue, of course, of government corruption. The truth of the matter is, as we all know, um, it is definitely the biggest thing that destroys nations, okay? Many different things destroy nations. Obviously, everything from poor planning to not being, of course, getting used to the times that they're living in. They just want to do the same thing. To, of course, another thing as well, of course, that comes as no surprise to nobody, of course, war and of course, defeat through war and all that stuff. But the thing that absolutely destroys a nation the most out of everything, undeniably, is government corruption. Because for um, corruption, it destroys the ability for people, which obviously we live in a world run by money, for people to invest money in the public infrastructure, things like medicine, even the military, because obviously for people to do things, they need money to work on those things, and if you're not able to provide it, people not only do a poor job, they just simply don't do it at all. So as a result, corruption obviously destroys a nation more than anything else, which, of course, since capitalism, of course, is a system that is heavily associated with money, you know, of course, them being blamed for corruption is, of course, going to be the main thing that they're going to suffer from. Which, even though communist nations have a history of suffering from corruption too, when you look at the history books. But anyway, you get the point, okay? People do have biases, okay? But capitalism does, regardless whether we want to admit it or not, as people who are pro-capitalist, it does have a corruption issue, okay? And that is the honest truth. So the obvious way, you know, to deal with corruption is to understand what causes it. And what causes it is the misuse of public funds. People taking money that are supposed to use for projects and this and that and putting in their own pocket to spend it on different things, whether it could be going to fancy restaurants, going to expensive plays on their houses, yada 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 yada, all that type of stuff. Okay, so to be quite blunt and honest with you, people use their money on different freaking things. To be quite blunt and honest with you, okay, as a result, of those things, okay, and at least the corrupt people do, okay, instead of using it on the things that they're supposed to do. Now, the truth of the matter is, when it comes to obviously how you can prevent it, like I was getting at before earlier in the video, the best way to prevent government corruption, is of course, through monitoring the people when they're spending the money, because these officials obviously are watched. I mean, obviously do these things obviously unregulated, which is why they're able to get away with things. You know, they just go into public funds and they take things and screw things. But if they're obviously being monitored when they're making purchases, whether it could be, um, you know, purchases, or I should say deposits, my bad, deposits for things, whether, it could be maybe to, of course, use for the things they're actually supposed to use it for. To be quite blunt and honest with you, like helping with infrastructure, medicine, even farm, land, the military, whatever, all the basics that make our civilization function, if they're obviously being monitored, You can obviously know if they're using it for the right things, like the things I just mentioned, to help better our society, or they're using that money for, of course, bad things. In other words, things for their own personal satisfaction, like getting a big time Rolex watch, spending their money on expensive food, expensive clothing, expensive cars and stuff, yada, 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 you know, that they're not supposed to do it for. And that's the truth. That's the best way to prevent corruption. Okay. Now, of course, it's easier said than done, but fundamentally, absolutely, undeniably, on a fundamental level, that would be the solution. Okay, because if you can monitor people when they're making purchases for things, like they have someone who they're working with to make a purchase for things, we can obviously make sure that they do it for the right things, and they can't like fucking intimidate people, of course, to, of course, no surprise, um or whatever, to get what they want. Like, who the fuck are they going to do it to? If there's like a person there, when they're making a purchase for things, and there's like a security guard there, who the fuck are they going to fuck with? People who tend to do things like that, like corruption anyway, are weak people. They're not going to do shit, to answer your question. So to answer your question, you know, to put it bluntly, absolutely, undeniably, they have the right, you know, you know, the people in authority, who obviously monitor people, to make sure that these government officials do not take the money. Because obviously, if we do not do anything about it, then we're gonna have the massive corruption issues, which just gives the, oh my goodness gracious, the most annoying ideology of people out there, the communists, the whole people you see online, who complain, oh, capitalism is destroying us and this and that. Oh my goodness, those people are so goddamn annoying. Oh my god, they're fucking annoying. Yes, I'm not gonna hide my words. You know, they are goddamn annoying. Those people are not able to, of course, you know, um, to be quite blunt and honest with you, are not able to, well, fuck things up, as they usually do. The whole communist people, which communism is way, way, way worse than, um, of course, uh, as you already know, capitalism. If you actually studied history, okay, it's way worse. At least for capitalism, you can, even in a bad capitalism system, you can still do what the fuck you want. Communism, it could still be a corrupt system, and you can't do whatever the fuck you want to do, because there's people watching you and trying to monitor you to make sure you don't do certain things. So no matter how you look at it, communism, no matter what, is always going to be the worst option. Okay, so to answer your question in short, absolutely, undeniably, without a shadow of a doubt, no ifs, ands, or buts. We need to fix the capitalism system so these people, like the communists, are not able to spout out, and of course, we don't have people who become bitter and disenfranchised with the system, which obviously can cause chaos and violence and all sorts of things, for that matter. To be quite blunt and honest with you, if we can obviously have a system like this, where we monitor politicians when they are taking money out of public funds, then guess what? We can, for that matter, pretty much literally end corruption as we know it, okay? And that's the honest truth of the matter. That is the very, 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 very honest truth. So that's what I'm trying to say here. That's how we can solve this problem, instead of wasting our time complaining and, you know, and, you know, and saying all this stuff about, like, you see all these channels on YouTube, you know, these political channels complaining about how, the government has become more corrupt and corporations become more powerful. If we can simply apply this right rules, we can prevent this stuff from happening. And that's the honest truth of the matter. So to be quite blunt and honest with you, I definitely believe the system would work. Okay. Yes, it's an easy system, and yes, it would be harder to actually implement than of course you would imagine, but it's definitely something that can be done, for that matter, okay? And that's the honest truth. So to put it bluntly, that is what I believe can fix the capitalism system. And that is pretty much what I have to say for this video. You know, so we can live in a good capitalist society and not have to waste our time, with the whole bullshit about communism is going to enlighten us, let alone save us and all that type of crap you have to hear all the time from the radical left, and that is the honest truth here. And this is what us, for the real left, not the radical left, us, the real left, need to do in order to, not only make things better for the world in this way, but make it more likely the left will win elections so we can, of course, fix numerous problems for the world. So we can help make the world overall a better place. And that's the truth. So anyway, this is my video. This is all I have to say. I hope you enjoyed it. And that is all I have to say. And simply put, I'm out. So bye.